I am here today with Molly Harris. She is a board certified occupational therapist with advanced training in lifestyle redesign, an occupational therapy approach that examines a person's habits, roles, routines, and self-care to uncover barriers that hold them back from living life fully. She is the creator of the Rejuvenate and Radiate Revolution that overcomes the barriers and builds a plan to create one amazing life. You can find more at www.molly-harris.com, and I will have that link in the show notes. Molly, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great introduction.
I invited Molly to join the Whole Being Zone today to discuss brains. And no, Molly is not a zombie, though she is a self-described neuro nerd. So I'm going to give you the warning now. We may geek out a bit on this show. Stay with us, though, because I have no doubt you are going to learn a lot of really applicable things that will revolutionize your life. So, are you ready, Molly?
I am always ready to talk about the brain.
Yay! Let's start with the mind-body connection. How does the mind impact the body?
This is, you're starting out with a really heavy question, but I love it.
I like to go deep here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's for. There are so many different ways that you can look at it. And one of the things that I really try to do when I'm talking to people and working with people is make it as approachable as possible. So when you're talking about the mind-body connection, I always start with think about how you feel mentally when you're physically sick, and think about how you feel physically when mentally you're not on your game. And right there you get some instant images in the brain or in your mind, however you want to say it, of exactly what I'm talking about. So physiologically, excuse me, and anatomically, when we talk anatomically, we're looking at the actual structure, the makeup of our brain and our body. And when we're talking physiologically, what we're talking about is how those different structures function. One of the things that's really hot right now in science and human research is the brain-gut connection.
Yes.
And a lot of health nuts out there probably know what I'm talking about. And our brains have 12 nerves that go straight from our brain to different parts of our bodies. One of those is called the vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve travels directly from your brain and goes down into your gut. And what I always tell people is when you have a gut instinct, listen to it. Because basically what that is it's your brain sorting through all these different life experiences and different thought processes and different morals that you've established in your life. And in an instant, what's happening is your brain saying, okay, this is what I know to be true in my life, but your sort of rational center, the higher thinking center in your brain is saying, well, it could be this, or it could be that, or these are my preferences, so hopefully it's going to go this direction. That transmission, sort of like an internet connection from your brain to your gut by that vagus nerve, is saying, hold up, wait a minute. I'm not talking to my reasoning center. I'm talking prior experiences, what I know to be true. So sometimes your gut can actually be a little bit more rational than that higher thinking side of your brain. So there's a lot of great evidence to say that our minds and our bodies are connected, whether you go the more scientific route of that vagus nerve connection, or you go that just sort of life experience route of when I don't feel good physically, my mind is shot, and vice versa.
Right. So and I know nutrition is not necessarily your expertise, but what role does the food that we eat play in the communication between the gut and the brain?
Again, great question. I'm going to say this probably every time you ask because I get so excited. So, I think a lot of times we really see our brain as its own entity,
Yeah.
and in sort of this motherboard per se of different connections within the nervous system that control our body, but that don't the brain necessarily doesn't have a connection to the physical side of us, when in actuality it really does. um, the network of vessels, of arteries and veins that go through our brain um, actually metabolize in the same way that the rest of our body metabolizes the nutrients that we put into our body. And, just again, talking in layman's terms, you think about like brain food. If you're studying for a huge exam, you really want to give your brain some good food and some good nutrients. Just in the same way that if you were going to be running a marathon, you would want to give your body good nutrients. And so your brain uses energy just like the rest of your body uses energy. And so kind of thinking a little bit of in a shift of looking at your brain as one segment of the entire circle or sphere, however you want to look at it, of who you are as a being, a physical being in this world, you really get a sense of it's not this segment that just exists in the top of your head. It's just one piece of the greater whole that is you.
Hmm. I substitute teach, and I have been less than impressed at lunchtime at the schools, not only what the schools are serving the kids, but what parents are sending their kids with for their lunch to school.
Mm-hmm.
As I
Mm-hmm.
looked at a table full of kindergartners yesterday, there were 16 kindergartners, and about a little over a third had brought their lunch. All of them were eating prepackaged food.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
it was just fascinating because I also noticed that in this particular school, there were there is a great deal of behavioral health issues.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and they are struggling to bring up the testing grades. So it's so fascinating to me that we don't see the brain as a part of the whole, and we focus on things like weight loss and stress management and all of that, but we don't think about the holistic part of it, of what we're feeding helps to make it work more optimally. It's like putting crappy gas into a Ferrari. It's not going to run as well.
Exactly.
And
And
yet we see our brain or our bodies as these Toyota Corollas.
mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
It is.
Nothing wrong with a Corolla.
Exactly. um, you know, there's so many different directions you could take that statement. Um, Something that comes to mind that's a little bit off of what you just said about being in the schools, but kind of in a roundabout way gets back to it. I, as a young woman, dealt with anorexia and bulimia and body dysmorphia and things like that. And now, as a middle-aged woman, mother of two children, am physically in much different shape than I was, we'll even say 10 years ago. I was a dancer. I was in a modern dance company for a while. And, looking at my body now, I am nowhere near the shape that I would like to be. And I really struggled with sort of like this switch flip, getting to that point where I'm ready to do something about it. And the other day, I just happened to kind of be thinking about that sort of, I guess, catchphrase, if you will, that your body is a temple. And I'm like, okay, like that's so cliche, your body is a temple, rah, 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 like everybody says that, whatever. And I got thinking about it, I'm like, all right, well, let's take a little bit deeper with that because I'm such a why person. And, I'm like, okay, well, why is it a temple? What is it a temple for? And I'm like, well, it's a temple for my spirit, that sort of essence of who I am as an individual that is unlike, and we all have bones, we all have muscles, we all have brains, we all have a network of nerves and pathways and things like that. But we are all unique individuals, very, like, infinitely unique, I guess is the best way to say it. And so I thought, okay, so my body is a temple for me. And then I got, sort of like this, like continuing road on this path of thought. I'm thinking, I've spent all this time. I had a nervous breakdown. It was probably about a year and a half ago now. I've spent all this time sort of mending and recovering and learning a new way to live since that experience. And I've been so focused on the mental aspect of things, my thoughts, what I'm choosing to think about, what I'm choosing to spend my time on, and how that affects how I feel mentally, that I've completely let go of that, exactly what we were talking about before, mind-body connection. And I've been just solely focused on my mind. And I realized, my training has taught me you are not just one aspect of yourself, like I was just talking about. You are a whole being. Your brain, or, like for me, it's not just my brain. It's not just my panic disorder. It's not just my physical health. It is all part of one bigger package, the essence of me. And so I got to thinking, I'm like, I can be mentally in a really great place, but now physically, I'm so, like, I'm kind of desecrating my temple. I'm not honoring this physical structure that houses the essence of who I am. And so, long story short, I said to my husband the other day, I'm like, here I am working so hard to move to a better place mentally that I've completely let go of that physical side of things. Yes, part of it is fear, part of it is intimidation of, I have 20, 30 pounds to lose, and that's a lot of work, and it's intimidating, especially for someone who did it the wrong way for many, many years and did it in an unhealthy way. And I think that, there's such a strong call for a shift in how we look at things, that we're not just what's right and wrong about each of us, whether, we're looking at ourselves or someone else. It's like, what are the good things? What are the not so good things? What do we need to fix? What things are okay? I think we need to start looking at ourselves as almost like a ball. Like, if you didn't have every different angle and degree and dimension and aspect of that sphere, it would not be a sphere, and it wouldn't bounce, and it wouldn't roll, and it wouldn't, it wouldn't serve its purpose. And I think that as humans, we are multidimensional, just like a sphere is multidimensional. And I think we really need to start looking at ourselves as it all needs to function as optimally as possible. And, just sort of shift away from what's right and wrong, and get into that, how can we make everything kind of flow and work together and become more in synergy, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. We have a lot in common. I grew up dancing and struggled with some of the same issues that you did. And I teach yoga. I've been teaching yoga for about 13 years now.
Awesome.
And
I am a yoga teacher as well.
I know. That's one of the things I love about you. And I've been in health and fitness for my whole career. That's my degrees in exercise science. And so one thing that's fascinating to me is the mental wrap we put around exercise. And I don't know anyone who hasn't had the experience of, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, and then when they do it, they say, yeah, but I feel better, I'm glad I did it. But it's
Mm-hmm.
that forcing yourself to get into it. And as you were talking, what I was thinking about, what came to mind was a child, that a toddler that's learning how to move, and the
Mm,
pure joy of moving and exploring their body and how it moves through space, and the ability to find that freedom to take each step gives them more freedom. And
mm,
even though it's hard, even though they fall, and sometimes harder than others, they keep going because they know that there is something waiting on the other side of being able to do that. And it's almost an intuitive, like hardwired thing, learning how to do that. And I'm wondering how we can tap into that as adults who have gotten away from, or put the, we, I know we create our own definitions, but have put that wraparound exercise that it's hard, it's not fun, people are going to
mm.
judge me, I don't, I don't know how, all of the limitations that we put on it. How can we start to break free of that? How do people start to shift out of their limiting habits?
Um, I've I wish that we had like 20 conversations because I could go in 20 different directions with this. I think the first thing, the most with I'm really not getting the right word here, but the most tangible, I think, thing that we can take away from that question is, where are you in the process of being ready to change? There is a researcher by the name of Prochaska, and this researcher developed this theory of your readiness to change, and what are the different stages of that, and where do you fall within those stages. So I can't at the moment recall the actual names of every stage, but sort of like this pre-contemplation stage where you know you need to do something, but you're just not there. Then you're kind of just toying with the idea. You know that you're not in the right place, but you don't really have the resources to do anything more about it. And then you get into the contemplation stage where you think about someone who says, okay, I really would love to run a 5K because I know if I start running, I'll start moving my body and exercising, and I'm committing to something and getting in better shape. So you may not start running, but you go out and you buy sneakers and you buy an outfit to run in. So you're kind of like just kind of testing the waters a little bit. And then you get into the action phase where you start running, and you may not do it consistently, but you're doing it and you're working toward it, and you progress through these stages. And I think that has really helped personally me, but I think also so many people that I've worked with that kind of feel as though, well, I know I need to do this, but I feel bad about myself because I'm not there yet. And so I
Mm.
just must be a failure. You're not a failure. You're just not at the right stage yet. And I think that, kind of embracing that is really empowering and freeing, because then you can say, okay, so what do I need to do to get to the next stage? Do I need to wait till I feel ready to go buy those sneakers, or do I go out and buy them and see how that makes me feel? You have a choice to go either way. And I think listening to how you feel internally, and again, it goes back to that first question of that mind-body, brain-gut connection, thinking about buying those new sneakers, what does that give you as a gut reaction? Does that completely overwhelm you? Okay, well, why? Why is that overwhelming to you? Why are you feeling nervous about that? Is it because you're unsure of how it's going to make you feel physically, or is it because you're embarrassed that you've gotten to where you are? And so it's these multi-layer sort of journeys that you can take with it. And I think, aside from that, I think, stepping outside of sort of that theoretical model, you can say, okay, I know where I am And I think it's really tough to be brutally honest, but I do think that tough love is totally important, whether it's, sort of an intrinsic thing, you give yourself some tough love, or you hear it from somebody else extrinsically. But, you say, okay, I know I need to do something. I feel lost. Thank goodness that we live in the age that we do now, because we have so much information at our fingertips. If you want to figure out how to do something, Google it. Go online. Say, how do I get healthy? And see what comes up. And if that doesn't give you things that really kind of pique your interest, refine that and be an active consumer in your health, and be an advocate for what it is that you need to find out in this world. And I think that that's part of our, our modern society is, can be a blessing and a curse in terms of how connected we are, but harness those blessings and use the internet for the powerful tool that it can be, and seek out those opportunities to A, educate yourself, and then B, prepare yourself to take that action you want to take.
Absolutely. And when you are contemplating starting something new, allow yourself to remember, even if you don't have a memory of learning how to walk, but allow yourself to dig into that DNA and feel that pure joy of just doing it. The willingness to be curious enough to start.
Well, and I do think, you strike a really good point, to be curious and the willingness to play with it, and not just, tinker around, but really play with that physical movement. Because I will be the first person to tell you, I love running. I hate running on a treadmill. And I live in central New York, about an hour outside of Syracuse. We have the highest snowfall rate in all of the United States. So not really conducive to running 365. That being said, you have to say, okay, well, I want to run. I can't run outside right now because I'm going to, break a leg or get a concussion slipping on the ice or something. So you do have to say, okay, well, I can either run on the treadmill and suck it up and say, okay, I want to run, so this is my choice, or what are my alternatives? And I think that in our world today, we're not encouraged to play. As adults, play maybe has this stigma of like a very childlike task, but as an occupational therapist, I look at play as a way to spend your time that spans your entire life. It's not just something that you do in childhood. And I think when you kind of step back and take less of a microscopic view of playing, you can find more joy in your life. And so for me, I hate lifting weights. As a dancer, I'd rather do yoga. I'd rather go to a dance class. I'd, have some friends. We were in a musical together this fall. And we had a lot of tap dancing parts. And so I'm thinking, let's start a little group, and, once a week, couple times a month, let's just get together and tap. Because it was just so freeing and enjoyable and phenomenal exercise, of course, but it didn't feel like work. And how much of our modern society, our modern lives, are focused on producing and being more and producing more and going to the next level. And I think we're so just focused on drive and meeting goals and meeting expectations. I don't know that we have a great focus on release and play and letting go and experiencing the joy of just being still sometimes,
Yeah. And I gotta confess that I never played Capture the Flag until last year. And I played with a bunch of high school kids. Oh my God, is that the hardest thing ever? Running marathons was easier than that stupid game. So all of the same games that we played as kids, from kickball to Red Rover or
Mm-hmm.
Freeze Tag, those are the same games that are just as much fun. And if you don't have a big space and a group of friends to do that, make a playlist on YouTube. I have a playlist now on my two of them on my resources page for this
Mm-hmm.
very reason. Have a dance party with yourself.
Oh, okay.
30
Yeah.
minutes. You can do it. It's like so
Yes,
easy, but yeah,
absolutely.
I'm with you. Play is so, so, so important.
Yeah, and just like let go. And I feel bad because my husband is very much a private person, and I'm like, well, here's the thing. I'm not. And as I'm building this online business, I'm going to call you out, but in a very loving way. And my husband is in pretty much every way, shape, and form the complete opposite end of the spectrum as me. I'm obsessive compulsive, where he tends to leave a trail. I'm a lot of times head in the clouds, where he's very like regimented. So we balance each other out. We kind of find a happy medium most of the time. And but he's very much like a commercial banker, and he has his rows and his columns for his spreadsheet formulas, and everything fits into one of those. And if it doesn't, you get an exclamation mark that says, okay, something's not working. And it's like, we really need to just kind of let loose here. So we're going to throw on some music. And we have two little kids, 7 and 4, and it's amazing to watch him sort of transform into sort of like, he kind of gets childlike, and it's beautiful to see, because it's like he's finally just like letting go of all those inhibitions and all those shoulds, quote, and supposed to, quote, sort of behaviors that, they really hold us back. I have this conversation with people all the time, whether it's at my day job or, my online business or whatever, but, it's this whole thing of, we only have one life, and how fast has it gone to this point? And our life is such a beautiful gift. God, the universe, whatever deity or higher power or not that you believe or don't believe in, whatever, regardless of that fact, we're all here for a very, very, very short time. And as we age, I feel like we realize more and more that life becomes more and more fleeting.
Yeah.
And I think that, just realizing how fast time passes, and how much we, to me, having that nervous breakdown, I realized, yes, I'm a mother. Yes, I'm a wife. But, beyond all of that, I am me. And I can't live this life day to day unhappy or unfulfilled, or, sort of just numbing myself through every day to get by. It's not a way to live. We're here. We don't know why we're here, and we can't really change the fact that we're here. Hopefully that, none of us would take that action, obviously, to change why we're, the fact that we're here. But we are here right now, so why not savor it and make it as beautiful as possible?
I love it. How do you help people build a transformation plan?
Here, hang on one second. I'm just gonna. Okay, sorry. A little interruption from the 4-year-old here. So building a transformational plan, I think, one of the things that separates me from maybe a traditional, quote, life coach is the fact that I do have those credentials as an occupational therapist, and I do have that advanced training in lifestyle redesign, because what I do within that side of my practice is I initially will meet with a person and go through what we call an initial evaluation. So basically, it's taking your entire life and looking at what's wrong and what's working. And then from there, we build that plan. So what are the things that you're satisfied with? What are the things that aren't satisfying right now? And where do you want to be? What those things that aren't satisfying, what would make you feel satisfied? And then from there, we analyze that information and say, okay, well, let's make a plan. How are we going to get you from that dissatisfaction to a level of satisfaction that makes you feel like you're really living a full life? And that's where, a lot of that nitty gritty, dirty work, a lot of that, you know, stages of change and readiness to change, and sort of being that maybe devil's advocate or tough love person comes in. But that's really where I think it separates. Anybody can become a transformational coach. I think for me, it's that looking at those day-to-day habits. What are the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis that maybe you're not even realizing you're doing, but that are contributing to your overall sense of happiness, health, well-being, satisfaction, and really looking at how can we change that. And whether it's changing a habit or changing our physical health, it's going to be overwhelming, and I'm, I think the thing that separates me another level is that I also live it. I had a nervous breakdown. I've gone from the depths of despair, to quote Anne of Green Gables. But you know what I mean? Like being in that sort of like everything has crumbled around me. And so I don't have the luxury of wallowing in that, because I have 2 kids and a husband that are depending on me, and, an employer who expects me to come back to work the next day. So what am I going to do to make it okay?
In my limited knowledge, the brain seems to need efficiency in the way that it maps and the way that it searches those maps to help us make choices via our emotions. Mm-hmm. How does the brain's need for efficiency play into our modern habits and lifestyles?
Okay, and I was going to talk about this before. I'm so glad you asked. So basically, our brain is constantly looking for the most, like you said, efficient, shortest route possible. And when we're looking at change, truly what we're looking at from that physiological, that functional standpoint of the brain, is we're looking at changing the paths that travel through our nervous system take place. So we've ingrained certain behaviors in our nervous system. So for example, for me, I'm really trying to cut down and ultimately limit how much coffee I take in every day. And one of the ways that I've been doing this is by drinking either just straight water in the morning, or warm lemon water. Sorry, a 4-year-old interruption. But so that some days for me, it's like I'm doing this. I don't feel like doing it, but I'm doing it, and that's sort of me willing myself to step out of the comfort zone of the automatic. I wake up every day, I go in the kitchen, I make my pot of coffee. It's part of my habit. So I have to break that. And it's a natural, efficient thing, especially in the morning, because mornings are miserable. If you're anything like me, I'm not a morning person. Or, there's those days when I wake up and I, pardon my language, but I say, screw it, I'm too tired. I don't, one of the kids was sick last night. I didn't get enough sleep. I don't care about water. I just need the caffeine right now. And so you kind of revert back to that. I don't have enough resources to function on a high level right now, so I'm just going to do what's comfortable. And, I think setting yourself up for success is huge. Taking, again, that sort of morning routine of, breaking away from the coffee habit. You need good sleep. You need to be at the top of your game. Or, if it's, working out, You can't spend a day at a stressful job and necessarily expect yourself to have the mental energy to then say, okay, I'm going to go work out for an hour and I'm going to be excited about it. You're probably not, you know. So it's at least having that consciousness of, this is not going to be easy because I'm so programmed to do it a different way, because that's what my brain perceives as efficient. And so really what you're trying to do is become efficient in a new way. And it takes time. You know, a lot of people say it takes 21 days to make a habit. I don't know off the top of my head the research per se, but it's more like 40 to 45 to really start to change those neural pathways, those nerve roadways that go from your brain to whatever it is that you're doing. So
yeah, I read just recently 66 days, which was
yeah.
a little bit disheartening for me as I'm trying to change some habits myself right now.
Well, and that's the thing, like, you know, to go back to maybe what I do as an occupational therapist. So for me, okay, yeah, it is. Let's be honest about that. It is really overwhelming. You know, I mean, you can take any sort of change. I think a lot of us can relate to weight and, you know, things like that. But I mean, it can really be any sort of insecurity or any sort of thing you want to change. It does take time, but it doesn't mean that, you know, I think with the instant gratification that we have within our society and within the technology that we have today, I think it makes it even that much more challenging, because everything is at our fingertips. And we have those 21-day fixes, or we have the, you know, different meal plans that, you know, eat our food and you'll lose weight, you'll lose all the weight you need to in 10 days or whatever. I think that, again, shifting that perspective, not being so microscopic, and saying, okay, I may not be at my long-term goal. And as an occupational therapist, I look at, okay, what is your long-term goal? And now let's make some short-term objectives to get there. So objective number one is, you know, and let's just take, you know, for the sake of it, weight. Say you want to lose 20 pounds. So my long-term goal is I want to lose 20 pounds. All right, well, what do you need to do to get there? So short-term objective number one is I'm going to work out 3 days a week, every week for the next 4 weeks. And then short-term objective number two is I'm going to eat vegetables, or eat 5 servings of vegetables 5 out of 7 days a week, you know, and just sort of building these different steps that get you there. I mean, when you build a house, you don't just build the whole thing all at once. You build the foundation, and then you build the frame, and then you know, start to put the walls up, and then you make the refinements and the style and different things like that. So I think that, like, understanding that yes, you have a great long-term goal, and yes, it's going to be challenging, but there's so many incremental things that you can do to get there that you should be celebrating along the way.
Yeah. I love how we're talking about such a serious topic, and I get to hear your child playing in the background.
I'm so sorry.
With such joy and exuberance. It's awesome. I love it. And just kind of, you know, stepping in to emphasize our point we were making earlier about the need to play.
Yeah.
So great punctuation there.
Yeah.
What are some good brain fitness exercises you could share with us?
Oh, you know, Lumosity is something that really has been getting a lot of momentum lately, and it's something that I used intermittently when I was working in concussion management. Mm-hmm. I'm a little outdated on my research. I think there is good evidence to that lends itself to the subject of what's called neuroplasticity, which is your ability to change your brain and how pliable your brain is throughout your life. Just to give you a little bit more information on that, you know, like, it would be the difference between having a stroke at the age of, say, 30 and having a stroke at the age of 70. You're going to be able at the age of 30 and 70 make new pathways and to recover from that brain injury of having a stroke, but you're going to do it much more quickly at 30 than you are at 70. Just like probably you would do pretty much anything at either of those ages. So there's that side of it. And I do think that, maybe stepping away from sort of that clinical research side of things to say that, to be very cliche, use it or lose it. The more active we are physically or mentally, the stronger our physical or mental body will be. And there's a great amount of evidence to say that either is very beneficial to us. And there's all sorts of different factors that come into play, whether it's genetics or, where you live geographically, what you're exposed to environmentally, all that kind of stuff. But, taking those active roles to be as alive and in the moment as possible, I think is important, no matter what side of life no matter what side of life you're approaching it from.
If you could help the world know one thing completely, wholly, what would it be?
Oh, boy. I think I'm so bad with this because I think it depends on I'm such a situational person. I think ultimately, to just let people know that we all, no matter what our circumstances, truly, we have within ourselves the resources to create the life and to be the person that we want. And no matter what shadows that, no matter what gets in that way, have that faith, have that little flicker of light to guide you, because life does get in the way. It's chaotic, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, but that's part of life. And I think that it helps us shape who we are, and I think it helps us appreciate when we get to some of those points where we say, wow, I can't believe I'm here right now. This is where I was hoping to be, and I'm here now. I think it makes us appreciate it even more.
Yeah, definitely. Other than your children, obviously, what is one thing that you value the most?
My goodness. I think my curiosity, because when I feel curious and I want to know why, I want to know more, I want to understand, it's because I'm trying to make myself a better person. I feel like I'm not settling for what somebody else thinks my life should be. And I may end up at the very same endpoint that I would have had I taken that other person's advice, but I've always been that person that I need to know experientially that, and unequivocally, this is the right path that I took. Not because somebody else told me that's what I should do, but because I thought it out and I figured it out and it made sense to me. I guess you could say I'm stubborn. I don't know.
No, I think it's awesome. One more question. What does whole being mean to you?
I think it goes back to what I said before, that that idea that we're not segmented beings. We are spherical. I don't know why I keep coming back to that today, but for some reason that really makes sense to me, that I think sometimes we look at ourselves as very segmented parts, and we are whole. We are one whole person. We are completely unique. And I think we need to honor the uniqueness and the individuality of ourselves and of others, and appreciate that while we can be very similar in so many ways, that we also need to honor those needs and desires that make us who we are as individuals, and that's a blessing. It's not something to be embarrassed or shy about. It should be something that we savor and celebrate.
Oh, that's lovely.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
So if you would like to learn more about Molly, you can visit her site, which will again be linked in the show notes at www.molly-harris.com. Molly, it was quite an honor and a pleasure and truly a joy to get to geek out with you today.
Thank you. Likewise. I had such a great time.
And what is your 4-year-old's name?
Noah. And
Thank
he's
you,
about
Noah.
Yes, thank you, Noah. Yeah, our other one's at dance class, so.
Lovely. Well, thank you, Noah, for showing up as well and reminding us all of the importance of play.